Hello everyone and welcome back to Whisky Wednesday. I'm trying to emulate Joe today with my big chair. Yeah, this one's a little bit short notice, so apologies for that. But we've got a really cool product today, something I only opened the other day, but I've owned for a really long time. This is Widow Jane 10-year-old. This is a 2023 release, 45.5% ABV, 90 proof bourbon, and it is a hand-selected batch of 5 barrels per batch. It's not a lot of bottles, even at like full capacity barrels, although that's unlikely. And I've actually been to the Widow Jane distillery back in 2018, so a long time ago. And they're probably one of the most interesting distilleries in the world in the sense that they're part whiskey distillery, part chocolate factory. Used to be like a parachute testing facility. It's in the middle of Red Hook in Brooklyn, and that area has really sort of been built up and has got bigger and busier now, which is quite nice because it was very quiet for years. Even though they do distill their own whiskey, and indeed some of their liquid is probably in this now, or maybe not this batch, but certainly newer batches. This was sourced from distilleries in Tennessee, Kentucky, and Indiana. The Indiana one we can probably guess is MGP. The Tennessee one we're unaware of, and the Kentucky one, again, it's a stab in the dark, but it could be Heaven Hill, it could be anyone, so we don't really know. But beautiful labelling. Once you see this thing on a back bar, it's going to be rare that you won't be able to spot that. Simple, bold lettering, Widow Jane 10. The reason it's called Widow Jane, I believe it's something to do with the water. Or maybe it isn't, but the Rosendale mines are north of sort of New York, and they source all the water from there, which is quite nice. But yeah, it's whiskey from a chocolate factory. What more do you want than that? I opened this, I want to say a week ago, in a little celebration, and it's been in the glass for quite a while at this point. Let me just grab it. This is a non-chill filtered bourbon, which is a little bit unusual as a standard offering, but I suppose when you have a batch of casks that small, you may as well, don't chill filter it. To give you some context, batches for small batch products like Wild Turkey Rare Breed and stuff like that are about 200, 250, which is still honestly quite small batching. But with this just being 5 barrels, it's pretty intense. I don't know how long they're aging the casks on site before they pick them to put into their specific batch for this whiskey, but it's all taken care of by their own in-house blending team. So it's nothing, they're not outsourcing blending, it is all done in-house, but I'm sure by the time they have enough stock to do this on their own, they'll probably stop buying other people's product. But at the end of the day, as long as it tastes good, it doesn't really matter. Making a distillery is a very expensive output, and if you can afford to buy good quality whiskey from elsewhere and make a good product whilst yours is waiting to get there, why not? But let's smell, taste, and see what's going on. Even though it's only been open for a week, the first smell was just all oak, and now it's so fruity. It's just full of honey and blackcurrant. There's even some more tropical stuff, almost getting into a mango and a pineapple sort of territory. One thing I've always found with Widow Jane, this is the second bottle that I've owned. I bought a bottle in New York many years ago in Brooklyn. This is the second one I bought as a UK release. And even though I'm only enjoying wine as a product in the last couple of years, I've always found that this stuff, in the same way that Eagle Rare 17 does, just has these red wine notes to it. That could be a combination of a couple of things, just general aroma, cherry, blackcurrant, red fruits, very red wine, but also just the amount of oak influence this has. You do get just this soft, warm oak smell to it. And then, not because it's also made in a chocolate factory, but there is also some really nice milk chocolate notes. And loads more of those red fruits, like cranberries, like a goji berry smell to it. Despite the level of oak, because it is a little bit more impactful on the palate, it is a very nuanced, fruity, alluring, welcoming kind of nose, as I think all bourbon is, really. But let's taste it and see where the fun is. Apologies, I've got like a blister on the top of my gum, so this thing is really cleaning it out today. The first big wave is all of that oak. There aren't a lot of bourbons around today. There's only really Eagle Rare 10. I'm going to get slated now for all the other ones that exist, but in terms of old age-dated bourbon, there really isn't a lot of it, because a lot of it doesn't work when it's older. 6 to 8 years is kind of the honey spot for bourbon. But the first sip of this, it is all of that big, warming, gentle oak, which reminds me of the heavier, like Italian red wines I've had. As the oak begins to kind of dissipate, the spice runs through, and it's only 45.5%, but the amount of influence the oak is having with the spiciness of it, you have to kind of sit up and pay attention to this thing. It's not a bourbon with like a delicate start. It kind of gives you this big, powerful, whoa kind of sensation at the front, and then you start to get all the subtleties at the back. And I'm now tasting like blackcurrant jam, damsons. It's so fruity. There's even like a maple syrup quality to it. It's just delicious. It's not the thickest product in the world. It does have a nice texture. But as you kind of breathe air in, as you're tasting it and as you've swallowed it, those orange oil notes that you get at the bottom of an old-fashioned, this kind of reminds me of one of the sips towards the end of a really well-made old-fashioned. You've got these spicy bitter notes, you've got the warmth of American oak, you've got the sweetness of corn, the sweetness and the intensity of virgin oak. I've already said American oak, I think. And then all of these kind of after lingering olfactory sense aromas of fruit and like gentle spiciness. It's almost moving into like a cooking spice thing of cinnamon and mace. A really long, slightly drying finish. Not a whiskey you need a lot of, I will say. And even now it's milk chocolate and dark chocolate. Little flecks of like cherry. And then as those sweet notes kind of hit their peak and die off, you get this wave of oak running directly through it. It just cuts through. Really like that. Elephant in the room is the price of the stuff. Now, I wouldn't say bourbon has become more expensive over time, because you can still get quite cheap, good quality bourbon everywhere. But this stuff has never really been known as being cheap. It's always been a more expensive premium style of bourbon. And in the UK you can pick it up between anywhere from about 80 to 90 pounds a bottle. I paid a similar amount back in the day of dollars. It was about $60, but that was 7 years ago at this point. That's kind of scary. Yeah, it was, 7 years ago. Whistle Pig for their rye charge quite similar amounts. Like, I've never really enjoyed Whistle Pig rye that much, and it's always been a really, really expensive product for what was originally similar reasons to this. But yeah, I think, if you had, if you had about £90 to spend on a bottle of bourbon, this is pretty good. And bottles that should be at that price no longer are at that price. So this is sort of filling a little bit of a vacuum of product for things that are being charged a lot more, like a hell of a lot more. So in a way it kind of sits on its own, but I do think, if this was like a £60, £70 bottle of bourbon, which isn't that much cheaper, but if it was, I think you'd be giving this like 9s all day, especially because of the amount of flavour profile within it. And how, actually even with the amount of flavour, how divisive it could be with the oak. Sometimes I really want oaky whiskey, sometimes I don't. My overall score for it is an 8. I think it's really, really good quality stuff. If you are a bourbon fan, you should check it out. They do make rye as well, but I'm kind of hoping that at some point they will release a little bit more stuff into the UK, maybe some of their weirder, unusual things, or even some of the the younger rye and bourbon products, because it'd be cool to see like Widow Jane 6, Widow Jane 8, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'm going to give it an 8. It's a really good quality product. It is on the more expensive side, but I think for that expense you pay, you get quite a memorable flavour profile and an experience, certainly one that you won't forget. I'm going to go and make a old fashioned with this now, because that's all I can taste, and it's been quite a day today. But yes, I will see you all soon. Don't know if next week it'll be me or Joe. We'll find out. You'll find out on Wednesday. But yeah, you're going to see a lot more content coming from the two of us, and lots of other spirits too. Because I'm kind of bored of buying whiskey, and I want to buy more other things now. But yes, anyway, chat for another time. I'll see you all soon. Have a good day.